Welcome to Secrets of the Art Business podcast. Practical tools, insightful conversation for the curious art professionals. I'm Daniela Dupen, your host for Season 1. I'm the founder of the Blonder Dealer blog and also an art professional for the past 15 years. I met some really interesting artists, curators, collectors, and professionals that I hope will give you some great insights into the art business. And why not? We're gonna find some great secrets. So join us for the conversation and for this incredible journey. Welcome to episode 9 of Secrets of the Art Business podcast. Today in the studio, I have the British street artist, Remi Rough. Remi, thank you so much for coming here.
Well, thank you very much. You're welcome.
Remi, I've been following your work in the past, I would say, few months. I haven't encountered your work before, but I recently moved to Dulwich, and I had the pleasure of doing a tour of street art around Dulwich, and that's how I came across your work for the first time. And you have been creating work first as a writer, street writer, back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I would like to go back into a journey really through your career. And you started, painting trains and walls, and you also had some famous associations with Banksy as well for a couple of projects. But I think I wanted really to understand, you're now an abstract graffiti artist, and how you really came through the world of street art into the world of galleries and showing your work all around the world, really, from Milan to Trento to Berlin. And you've done so many projects around the world, also of public art, which we're going to talk about a bit later. But I really wanted you to reflect your path as an artist, coming from tagging and writing, graffiti writing, into abstraction, really. So both from an artistic point of view, but also personal from your career point of view.
Well, I love that you call it writing, because a lot of people don't call it writing, but it is writing.
It is writing, yeah.
So I love that, so thank you. Well, I mean, I guess I started it as much as a lot of kids my age, in the kind of mid-80s started, and there was this huge wave of kind of hip-hop culture coming over from the US.
Were you listening to the music a lot?
I mean, I kind of, so initially, I was into the dancing. I was into kind of like breakdancing, and that was kind of my first, I guess, visual access to it. And you had bands like Rocksteady Crew who were like, even in the charts at that point. And it was an alternative cultural thing. It was like, a cultural alternative that, I guess, growing up in, Thatcherite Britain, which was, a very hard place to grow up in. So, London in the 80s was a hard place to grow up in. It's kind of, especially even South London to an extent. And there was this thing that you became part of, and you became part of this kind of community, I guess, of people, creatives, dancers, musicians. And the interesting thing was everyone was kids, so all kids. So. And kids don't care. There's no idea of race, color, no preconceptions. It is just, you are just doing what you're doing, and you're all part of this bigger thing. And I really, once I kind of really discovered the graffiti aspect of it, I was at a friend's house, and he had this book called Subway Art, and I was just like, wow, what is this? And his dad had come back from the States and bought him this book. The book wasn't even out in the UK at this point. And I just started secondary school, and I was like, wow, this is pretty incredible. And it was all trains painted in New York, just pages and pages of trains. And that book, now it's like considered the Bible of graffiti writing and graffiti art. But at that point, I didn't really know what it was. And I borrowed the book from this kid, and I was drawing, copying stuff. And I can't even explain what connected with me. But, as so many kids my age at that point, so many kids connected with this. Then there was a follow-up documentary called Style Wars, which is really seminal, award-winning documentary that kind of was a film visual aid to the book. And the documentary was actually, I believe, made before the book. But it kind of goes into the sort of the aesthetics of it and why these kids were doing it. And, and at the time, I didn't really understand it, but I just knew I wanted to be part of this. And so I started writing graffiti.
Because you didn't really have a formal training in terms of art, so you just really went out.
Well,
and
I was 14.
Exactly.
I mean,
so you were so young, and you
I had
just
nothing.
tried and just started doing it. You said you got inspired by this book, and then did you connect to then a community of artists who were doing the same?
It's funny, you kind of like bit by bit you started, like I remember there was a kid at my school who, found out I was doing this graffiti and kind of said, I'm going to introduce you to my brother because my brother is doing this, but he went to a completely different school. So then I met his brother, we really got on, so then we started this little crew together, and then we met someone else, and it was this kind of interconnected thing. I always tell people graffiti was the first social media before social media, because even in the mid to late 80s, I was writing to people in the States, sending them physical photos. They were writing back to me, sending physical photos. And I was connected to all these other artists all over the world. So it was mad. It's like this social media.
I'm interested. What was your message when you were writing? Was it like, did you had a message that you wanted to come across and you get recognized by, or?
I mean, the message within graffiti is to burn. It's like to be the best. It's like, it's this kind of ingrained, like when you see big graffiti pieces, they used to be called burners. They were referred to as burners because it was you couldn't burn this. And there's this whole kind of slightly aggressive, but kind of in a nice way. It's like competitive, but like nice competitive. To be honest, like my message, I just wanted to get up and I wanted to be good at what I was doing and get my name as far out as possible and to really master the craft. And I guess the more and more I learned about it, the more I understood how important a craft this was and how important a movement it was. And even from the point of it being this the only art movement created by children and taken forward by children. Like nothing else has that. There's no other art movement in history that anyone can say, well, that was created by children. This has that. It's historically so important.
Absolutely.
And even now, like the art world in inverted commas is just literally scratching the surface around it, because I don't know, maybe they're frightened of it, maybe they just fully don't understand it, but it is historically so important. To me and a lot of other people. So I understood that, I think, by probably the early 90s. I kind of understood the levity of it.
And then also at some point there was a shift in your style, because you then you had a path towards abstraction more and more and more. And your style really evolved, and then you were also exposed to artists like, I was reading in your book that you kindly gifted to me, from artists like Malevich, which were great in abstraction, but also Italian futurism and abstraction in general. And I love your quote, which maybe you can tell us on your Instagram profile about abstraction. Because there's a lot of out there, but you really need to be different in that sense as well. And knowing now about your path and what brought you to abstraction, I can understand a lot more about it. It's not about colors, it's not about just the lines, it's a lot more to it.
I always think it's about trajectory, and it's about like traveling in a way. And the quote is, anyone can paint an abstract, but only a handful of people can make it say something. And I guess from when I started writing graffiti, the whole idea was to abstract letters. So you would take the simple shaped letter A and you would, like remodel it, you would change lines, you would add lines, add 3D effects to it, arrows, connections, things that aren't there in real life. And you would abstract this letter form. And I guess, even the fact that it stems from the letter form, and that's like the important kind of aspect of that that movement is the basis of letter forms. I always saw abstraction in it, and I was never that comfortable with the traditions of graffiti, because weirdly it has so much kind of tradition and kind of rules and regulations attached to it, because it's, as I said, quite historically important to all the people, the practitioners of it. So we all kind of hold it in this high regard, but I always used to think this is a rebellious art form. How can you put rules and regulations on a rebellious art form? There are no rules and regulations. And I went out of my way to discover people within my peer group who were doing different things and doing interesting things. I came across an artist called Juice126 from Birmingham. I actually met him at the World Graffiti Championships in Bridlington in Yorkshire years in 89 I think it was, and we just connected, and to this day he's still one of my best friends. But he was painting pure abstract pieces with no letters, no forms, no characters, literally just these really interesting abstract forms, really experimentational, and all with spray paint. So he was literally like, yeah, it's like a scientist, with spray paint. He used to mix all his own colors. Like, he had colors no one could even dream of. And he was a huge influence on me to kind of break away from this traditional aspect and kind of into a more free-form thinking
And
kind of way.
being in, having been in your studio, and we'll link also your Instagram profile so people can really understand a bit more about your background and your studio and your work. I understand that color is really important for you, and you're
Yeah.
also particular about your colors, because you were telling me you get particular colors from particular companies.
Yeah.
And they are also part of the whole work in terms of like the lines and the abstraction and the movement that you described.
You kind of have to work harder with spray paint because the colors are the colors. It's not like oils or acrylics
Yes.
where you can mix the colors. And I like that. I like, this is what you have, this is what you can do with it, and you kind of have to push the envelope with that tool. And it's like, spray paint is a really hard tool to use. I've been using it for 36 years, so I know my way around it. But it's not an easy thing to just pick up and use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like pushing the envelope on it, and I think that again the color stems from my youth days as a graffiti writer, because you always wanted these amazing colorful pieces. You wanted the pinks and the yellows and really lovely sky blues, and you'd never like do pieces in all grays or browns. You wanted the brightest colors because you wanted your piece to stand out.
Exactly.
And that I think I've pulled that into my studio practice, and that's I don't think there's a huge jump from what I was doing then to what I'm doing now, apart from the maturity of it and the kind of the next phase of it. It's like there's still elements of style and writing in there, or gestural, even though you can't see it. I mean, I can't see it. It's not readable, but the gestures are still there.
Yes.
And even the folding forms as they kind of move along, it's very reminiscent of just writing your name, and it's all kind of like muscle memory. So I don't veer away from it. It's part of what makes my fabric. I'm very proud that I'm part of that culture.
And I think you were so consistent through the years and through your career in really keeping your style and keeping it evolving in a very interesting way. And in that sense, not only you were approached through the years by galleries and collectors, of course, who acquire your work, you also build a really, really great, I would say, brand, if I can say this word. Yes, you build like a business.
Unintentionally, but
and a brand around you, and you have also a huge social media following, which you said to me that came out organically through all the collaborations you were doing and the public art. And one of the latest projects you've done in the sort of commercial world, in the brand partnership, which I found really interesting, is the one that you did with the Scotch whiskey company, and the brand that also was collaborating with David Beckham. So could you tell us about your latest project with Hague, and also the fact that you get approached by a lot of different brands, but it's your choice not to get associated with everyone? There's a lot of thinking behind that.
Well, the Hague Club project was amazing, and that came about, I think, in September, and I think after about 4 or 5 months of kind of getting it where we wanted it to be, it came out, and it sold out really quickly, and there were only 1,000 bottles. And it was really, it was really a dream job, to like work with Hey Club, and then, the David Beckham team, who were amazing. And I think, with projects like that, you have to kind of pick your battles, I guess, and I do get approached a lot by brands, and I mean, not even cautious. I just, I've got so much going on in my life. I kind of, if I commit to something, I want it to be something that I'm genuinely
Proud of.
and into.
Were you challenged by the project? I mean, creating art for like a bottle which confines you in terms of
Yeah.
light space. Was it a challenge for you?
Kind of. I mean, the biggest challenge was because of the kind of, going back to color, the kind of color I use. I wanted it to be so bright and so vibrant. And the first few test prints we got, and it's hilarious because they send you the test prints, but they send the test prints on a full bottle of whiskey. So I literally had so many bottles of whiskey. It was insane. I need to give some away. We couldn't get the colors right because the printer was quite muted, and that's just how the printer works. And I was like, look, we've got to do something because like the color, I need this color to be so vibrant, and it has to be representational of what I would do elsewhere.
your artwork,
So they had to literally recalibrate this printer and change how the printer worked. I don't know how they did it, but to kind of print more vibrantly.
I think this is a great example for many artists in a way that, when you get approached by brand, I think you already did that when you were experienced and you had a lot of different collaborations and projects. So you come from a position, I would say, of strength, but many other artists get approached maybe earlier in their career and they maybe don't think about all of these details that you just described, and maybe they just go into it thinking, oh wow, I got approached by this brand, that's amazing, without actually thinking about all the aftermath of that. And the fact that you also want to get your work in the best, purest and perfect form because it represents you at the end of the day. It's still part of you, who you are as an artist, even though it's a brand collaboration, and that will affect you for many years to come. And so you did completely right to do a lot of test print. And I think you do the same when you also have prints alongside. I mean, I came to your studio and you showed me your latest collaboration, which is coming out very soon, right?
I think today.
Is it with Art Republic?
Art
I
Republic,
think. Yeah, we'll link this to the podcast notes as well. If it doesn't sell out, it will probably sell out before.
Apparently they've done loads of pre-sales, which is really exciting.
Yes. But you were very particular when I came into your studio because you were showing me the test print, but you were also not happy about this and that, and you really thought truly about, even if it's just a print, it's still part of your work.
I think that's something, as you get older, you kind of understand how you want things to be, and you understand that you can get them to that stage. I think a lot of people just go, yeah, that's fine, and that's it. But I think I've got to a stage in my life where I don't mind making it a little bit harder to get something that everybody's going to benefit from.
Absolutely.
And I always say it's not just about me. I wanted the bottle to be great because I wanted Hey Club to be really happy with it. Same with the print. I want Art Republic to really get behind it, and and they're really cool company. We've done stuff together before, and Ben, who I work with there, is a really cool guy and is a good friend of mine. And I think it's worth putting the effort into these things. I do the same with paintings. The amount of things I scrap because I'm not happy with them. I don't put things out there that I'm not happy with. I think life's too short.
No, absolutely, and I think it does come across in your work. That sort of I would say perfection, if I can use this word.
I'm a complete perfectionist.
Yes. Yeah. And another aspect I wanted to touch on is your public art, because you've done so many projects. So I came across your work through the Dulwich street art project, street outdoor gallery, really. Yeah. And you have a beautiful work which is called Girl in the Window, which is also a collaboration with another street artist, System.
Yeah, a guy called Jason System, it's a very good friend of mine.
Yes, and you have it's just outside East Dulwich Station, train station, and it's beautiful because it's a combination of the two artists coming together, looking at old master paintings in the Dulwich Picture Gallery, and then creating something, completely new and still inspired by old masters. So I like the link. I think it's a wonderful project. But then from then on, you also moved into three others.
Three in my own area.
Yeah, and one that you just completed yesterday as well. So if you can tell us a bit more about your public art and how that really affected you. I guess that's affected you also, your sort of more commercial side, maybe the gallery side.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, I've painted walls my entire life. I was painting, walls that were like, 3 meters high when I was 15 years old. So I've never been fazed by the scale of things. It's just like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. And that's it. And you just get on with it. I guess as I've kind of shifted into this kind of more mural based work, which was probably in like 2008, maybe 2008, 2009, I really shifted into just painting murals. But I did, I think in 1999, I did one of the biggest murals in West London at that time, which was actually a commission. It was a brand collaboration with a games company. But we had this, free range to paint whatever we want. That was like a 3-story building in Portobello Road. So, I just paint walls. It's just something I do. I don't necessarily see it as street art. I don't think it has any correlation with street art. Like Diego Rivera wasn't a street artist. He just painted murals.
Yeah.
I'm just an artist. I paint walls. I paint murals. I think it's nice to give back to communities. I think it's nice for people to enjoy art for free. And I do see, I guess in Dulwich, where we both live, there's an amazing community of murals there. I think we have like something like 12 murals in the area now. And people, people do cycle runs or walks, and they're there for everybody. Once I've finished it, it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people who live there.
Yeah.
And so the one I finished yesterday was a private commission, which I seem to be getting more and more of, because people have their own buildings, they have their own houses, and they're like, we have this wall, would you do something for us? And yeah, I think that's kind of quite a nice thing to do.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I like doing murals. It's also, from a completely different perspective, it's a large part of my economy. It's a large part of, how I make a living. And I'm very lucky that people ask me to do it all over the world. So, well, they used to.
Well, that's amazing. And I think one of the project really that came out of the last year of COVID, because in 2020, of course, you were not able to travel all over the world and do a lot of projects all around. So one of the ideas that you had, which I found like genius, was called the Fantasy Project. So you took images of buildings and really iconic houses, really, architectural created places all around the world, and then you digitally changed them and added, your work. But you did still a lot of work because you had to do the digital.
Oh, good. Some of them took days.
Exactly.
Some of them took as much time as the actual mural would take.
Really? So can you tell us about the Fantasy Project and what it meant for you?
I can't take full credit for it, because it was actually Ian Davenport who did it first, and he was my neighbour in my old studio, and I texted him and said, look, do you mind if I do one, because I've got some ideas. And he was like, I don't know. I think he may even say he got the idea from somebody else. But that's where I got the idea from. And I did one. I think the first one I did was Tate Modern. It just seemed like an obvious one to do. I
actually like more your version of most of these buildings and galleries.
The thing is, it would be impossible, because the way the bricks are, they kind of interconnect outward. It literally would be impossible to paint. Like, you could probably project it, but you couldn't paint it. It would be impossible. So that's quite nice, because the only way that can exist is as a digital thing. So I think I ended up doing something like about 50 of them. I just kept finding new buildings. I went down this wormhole of Japanese architecture and discovered all these amazing Japanese architecture firms who built these incredible buildings in Korea and Japan. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. And I literally had like a folder on my computer of buildings, like buildings to do, like short list, long list. And I just kept plowing through them. And then I thought, why not produce a little book? And that sold out really quickly. So I did a second run. That sold out really quickly. So yeah. And I quite like the idea of self-publishing. I've been self-publishing for years. It's a really easy thing to do.
Yes, there are lots of resources now, like to do it. It doesn't cost really a lot.
You just need a good printer, and
exactly.
I know my way around sort of InDesign. I used to be a record sleeve designer in a previous life as well. So when I was kind of doing graffiti art in the 90s and 2000s, my job was as a designer in the music industry because I wasn't earning money from graffiti. I was just doing it for sheer passion. But yeah, so I have those tools at my disposal, and I just did the book. But yeah, the fantasy project thing was mad. I didn't realize how excited people would be because I wanted to do it because I couldn't paint walls, but I didn't think, well, people aren't seeing new murals, they aren't seeing as much art, and everyone's in their studio and I've done this, but it didn't have, I guess it didn't capture people's imagination the same way. And I did this, and people really seemed to go nuts over it.
I think
was
for
amazing.
me, exactly, for me, the use of color, because you have, quite a distinctive use of colors and a very bright, and I love that.
Yeah.
And you see these buildings that are very gray and very of course, the structure and the architecture is interesting, but they're a bit plain.
Yeah.
So you add another dimension to the building.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, and for me, it makes it even more attractive because, instead of seeing the life in black and white or in grays, you see the life in colors. And that makes, colors makes everything more interesting.
I think so.
Yeah. So I also wanted to ask you about, we talk a lot about the past. But, now that things are opening again, you are creating actually an exhibition in your studio. Can you tell us about the concept of the show, which is going to open when?
It's May 21st.
Okay, so that's soon.
So I've never done a show of all works on paper. And I love working on this handmade paper that I work because I love having my kind of sharp graphic work on very organic materials. That's why I paint on wood as well. And that kind of extends to murals because, when you're painting on sort of concrete environments, it kind of has
the texture.
It has a different sort of juxtaposition. And I love using the word juxtaposition, so I thought I'd throw that in there. But I guess the show came about because I had a couple of things that were lined up for this summer that I don't think are going to happen now for obvious reasons. And I just thought, you know what, I just moved into this studio. You've been to my studio. It's a nice big space. And I just thought I could do it here, and if I kind of manage things kind of in the right way and wait till hopefully the government opens things up, which I think is May 17th. Hopefully we can do it and it can be a bit more manageable, and people, I also thought people might be a bit more open to going to someone's studio and just being in a bit of a more intimate surrounding than suddenly ploughing into Tate Modern or,
yes.
I mean, even I'm a little bit nervous about just jumping straight into
a
museums
big museum,
So I thought hopefully people be into that, and I've had quite a lot of collectors of mine who want to see new work because I haven't really done anything this year. So I just thought it'd be a nice idea.
I'm looking forward to seeing the show, and we'll hopefully do a little preview actually on my Instagram on the Blonde Art Dealer,
That'd be
which
great, yeah.
It will be like a sneak preview of
cool.
your.
Well, I've seen all the framing; it's all done. So
amazing.
I'm probably going to start hanging it in a couple of weeks.
I'm looking forward to that. And just to close, I wanted to ask you one last question, which is, what is your, if you have any, your secret of the art business?
I mean, I don't think I have a secret. I mean, all I have is my honesty and my realism. I can't fake what I am and what I do. I know some people can, and that's great if they want to do that. I just have to be as real and as transparent as I can possibly be. And I think my kind of entry into the art world, I've been really lucky with it. I've been really lucky with the people I've worked with, and I've also had people that I work with who are very honest and very transparent with me, and I think that's really important. I think that's important in any industry, to be honest.
Absolutely.
But I do see the art world can be slightly flamboyantly in the nethosphere of non-reality sometimes, and I think it's nice to just come across people in that world who are very straight and very real. So if I had a secret, it would be just be yourself and be real. Yeah, that's probably it.
Well, that's a great advice that you gave everyone, and I think for many young artists who also maybe approach the world of art and street art as well, that will be valuable. So thank you so much, Remi.
It's okay.
And on this note, we're going to close on this episode 9. And thanks to our listeners to be here. And just tune in for the next few episodes. We're about to close this podcast. We have a few more episodes to go. So do follow us along. And I hope you enjoy it. And thanks again.
Thank you, Daniela.